Guys, welcome back to another episode of Eternal Backlog. Hope you guys have been doing well. It has been cranking up in temperatures here, both over in the US and in the UK. So if I look like I'm extremely shiny right now, it's not good skincare. It is down to this heat that we're getting. Well, they're calling it a heat dome here.
It's nothing to do with supporting the outcome of the Diddy trial, is it? Just
nothing to do with that. There was no baby oil used at all.
No Johnson & Johnson. Funny story. I heard today, actually, as the verdict was given out, everyone who's in solidarity with Diddy was oiling up outside the courtroom. Broad daylight. I don't know why that's relevant to this podcast. I just felt like it goes right there. Anyway. Back to you. It goes
right there indeed. Well, I did make a little weird game, didn't I, when I was vibe coding.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a callback for those that listened to episode 21. I don't know the exact episode, but anyway. Coming up on today's show, this is the first podcast we've had since we've both owned a Switch 2. So this is a real opportunity for us to go deep on that. And then we were going to record tomorrow, but we've just had another bomb drop in terms of news from Xbox, which we'll get into that a little bit later. But
we don't mean literal bomb drop either, because there's been a few of those as well.
Yes, there's been in other parts of the world. It's a crazy world to be living in right now. Fortunately, the price of bread isn't £5 a loaf yet. So we still got some headroom to keep running this podcast before everything goes real proper dire straits. But who knows what could happen in 12 months. Jerome Powell at the Fed, we're looking at you. Anyway, let's start things off. I might just do a little sort of obligatory run through the Playstack, and then we'll get into the beefy stories. I'm not going to step over too much of mine. And we're going to keep Mario Kart World really as kind of our featured game for this episode because, quite frankly, that's probably predominantly what I've been playing and you've been playing a chunk of as well. So it makes sense from that point of view. I'll just quickly mention a couple because I don't want to get too bogged down on the game section this week. F-Zero 99, I played that on Nintendo Switch Online. They were gracious enough to give me 7 days free online play with the new Switch console. That was it. I don't know. It was all right. It's. I would love to have seen they've done a Nintendo 64 version of that F-Zero 99. It was a little too down the dated path of graphics for me on that. And but the one game I do want to talk about, and I don't need to talk about any of these, Laker, Ghostwire Tokyo, Peglin, BlazBlue Centrification. I don't need to talk about any of those. But what I would like to talk about, because both of us can speak about this one. I think for me, the big surprise on the Switch 2 launch day was Fast Fusion. And I really liked what I've played of this particular game. To give guys that are listening on audio an example of what Fast Fusion is, think Wipeout. It's a Wipeout style / Extreme G, for those that remember that old game from Acclaim. It's one of those fast kind of, space kart racers or whatever they call them. Spaceship racers? Is that even spaceships? I don't know what the fuck they are, but...
Futuristic racer?
Fast Fusion.
Yeah,
futuristic racer. What were your thoughts on them? What was your thoughts on Fast Fusion? Because for me, I was really pleasantly surprised that how much of a smooth experience that was from a frame rate point of view, compared to what I was expecting to get on the Switch 2 at least.
Yeah, it's one of the standout titles, especially at launch. Digital Foundry did make a good point to point out the fact that this was a 120 FPS game. So I thought that in itself is quite a technological feat for the Switch. Bought it, played it. I thought it was good. It's practically identical to Wipeout, but it didn't do enough to keep me going. I think I probably put maybe 20 minutes into it, and that was about it, to be honest with you. It didn't... maybe I didn't give it enough of a chance to see its qualities really shine through, but for me it was like Wipeout, couple of games, all right, cool, it's nice. That was about it.
Oh, okay. I got a bit more out of it, To be honest, I thought it played better than a Wipeout game. To be honest, I thought it played faster. I did like
It is
the
faster,
boost system. You have to switch between orange and blue. These little grav tracks on, so you get penalized or rewarded for hitting the right boost pads. That was interesting, and the ability to make your craft jump, so you can change sections of the track. And it had a banging soundtrack, really, really nice soundtrack on that game. I just thought it was a nice little Switch launch title that was a bit out of the blue. And I'm for £15, considering everything else costs an absolute arm and a leg, apart from Deltarune, I think, was similarly priced on launch day. For me, I had a better experience for it anyway.
Each to their own.
That's all from my list that I want to talk about, really. Yeah.
For
what
me,
about yourself?
So I carried on the quest to 100% Star Wars Jedi Survivor. I got to about 84% of the trophies, and then when it came to picking up all the collectibles, I got frustrated one night and deleted the game from my hard drive. I'm like, no, I'm not doing this. There's just too many of them. The fast travel isn't. It's sort of far and few in between. And then the next day, something was cranking in my mind. I was like, no, I'm not that person. I got to install it back and get those trophies, So I installed it, got one or two more, and then got frustrated again, deleted it, and like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm playing something else. Well, same thing happened the next day. I was like, no, I can't be defeated by the game. So anyway, I installed it for the third time, and I did 100% it. That was tough. Anyone who's finished a Fallen Order or Jedi Survivor will know. So
That's interesting because I saw a playthrough of that game. I think you can probably play through it in, is it like 11, 12 hours? Without doing all the side stuff.
The main story, possibly, I'd probably say a little bit more than that, maybe 15, 16. But there is a ton of side missions, and the exploration in itself is a treat, so...
Yeah.
I still stand by it, though. It's a gorgeous game, and I see why it was a Game of the Year contender last year, but I also see why something else won. So, Respawn have just not had much luck when it's come to the Jedi games. Then I wanted something more first party, get back onto the grind, and I said, you know what, let me put Returnal on. They just dropped the 60 FPS PS5 Pro patch. And I really like the game. I think it plays extremely well. I love the environment. I love what it stands for. But it's got that one thing that I hate in video games, and that is the forced replaying of the same level. Because that's what the game's all about. You die, you remember that you don't die and you keep waking up, but you're basically every run that you try and do to get off this planet or level or whatever, you're trying to go further than you were previously with the memories that you've learned in your previous run, whether it's keys, weapons, routes, whatever.
So it's kind of like a roguelike in a way then.
It is, yeah. But the map is randomly generated, so every time it's different. So you're looking for the same things, but it's completely different. I guess it's to try and keep it fresh. Combat's great. I really loved it, but again, it's just anything that makes me replay the same thing over and over, whether it's a Fortnite or even this. I don't know what it's something about that. It gets to me. It feels cheap. It's like, we made the game hard on purpose so you can get stuck in this 1 hour for X number of hours to make you feel like you're really playing an in-depth game. And it's like, no, that doesn't work for me. I tend to see right through that, to be honest. So I want to say I played like 3-4 hours of that, got to the end of the first world, and I was kind of done with that, to be honest with you. I don't think I'm going to play that one through. What I did play with you, though, through is FBC Firebreak. That was something that got announced about 6 or so months ago. Made by Remedy,
we had
set
an
in the
evening
Control
of that.
universe. We had one evening of that. That's what it says on the tin. And that's all I can probably say about that, to be honest. It's plays nice.
It
But
plays
it's like every other online shooter.
pretty much, and you need the whole free team squad in order to be able to complete levels on this. And when we tried to get someone open the slot, is someone going to come in? There's actually more people that day that were playing. What's the Crime Boss? Because we never had a problem getting a game on Crime Boss, and that was old,
Rocky.
So it's a little weird that no one was, given that game was fresh out the box as well, to struggle to get people on there.
It just tells me that Remedy were building that way back when the whole free-to-play COVID thing happened, and everyone's trying to make a money generator. And this just happened to come out now, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I don't think it was anything. Nothing really grabbed me with it. Nothing really made me want to see what was happening next. And I guess it's the format of those style of games, I think.
Yeah, I think the only thing that made me give it a chance, because I'm like you, I don't really gravitate towards those kind of games. The only thing that kind of grabbed me was the fact that it was made by Remedy, which is a very reputable developer, and it was set in the Control world, which I love the Control game and the universe. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. Yeah. Other than that, I'll just blitz through the next few. Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection was on sale during the recent Capcom sale, so I picked that up, and boy, did that bring back some memories. Hypercharged Unboxed. We've been following this one for a little while. It's basically a toy store game. You're a plastic soldier or whatever, and there's a bunch of enemies that are all real people, and you've got little objectives. It's aesthetically beautiful. A little bit clunky in the way of gameplay, though. What is it? It's got like the jump button's in a weird place, just like Dying Light.
Did you manage to play any online on this? Because when I played it, I just played a bit of the single player thing on it, and that was pretty boring.
No, I did get sort of 3-4 online games in. But yeah, it tries to mix a little bit of tower defense into it as well. You pick up, tokens or something, and you can build like rocket launchers to kind of defend your home base and stuff like that. I see the appeal, but I think this game probably would have had a bit more success with being free to play rather than charging sort of the $29.99 that it did. So we'll see how that one pans out. But it seems to be doing well. I mean, they got massive amounts of praise, and they were like number one actually at one point on the Xbox store. And then same thing on the PlayStation store. They got to the top 5 as well. So people clearly want this kind of game. So good on them.
Yeah.
Obviously Mario Kart World, which I'm sure we'll get into. And then finally, in my search for the next first-party Sony game, picked up Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. And interesting. I didn't love it when I first started playing it, but I'm a week into it and I've almost 100%ed it. So it is a relatively short game, and does some very cool tricks with the SSD, jumping through worlds and stuff, but very misleading that. The
was it
trailers
really?
and everything. Well, the trailers and everything made it sound like you can sort of hit a button and travel between worlds if and when the puzzles permit. But that doesn't happen very often. In fact, you don't get to push a button. The game will put you through some sort of a quick time event, and then you'll go through a couple of portals for it to show off and stuff. Like, oh, now you're in the Jurassic world. Now you're in a futuristic world. Now you're underwater. Okay, back to your game. And, so it's a bit misleading in that sense. Fun game, though. Beautiful for what it is. And I'm enjoying it. So, there we are. Still haven't touched the Xbox in many months.
Some of the... Oh, there you go. Just a quick question on that. Ratchet and Clank was always renowned for its, interesting weapons. I haven't played that. Well, I've got it, but I just haven't played it. Anything particularly special in the weapons category there that quite fun, that worth mentioning? I
mean, most of the stuff's pretty standard. You've got your regular sort of machine gun type weapon. You've got throwable bombs and grenades. You've got like an electric weapon that when you shoot an enemy, the electric bounces to other enemies to freeze them. Shield weapons. Rocket launchers. Nothing. I mean, they're not traditional looking weapons, but they behave like traditional weapons. So,
yeah. Saints Row series still holding the best guns then. When it comes to the interesting guns you can get. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Yeah. That wraps up our section on the Playstack for this week. So it's an odd one because the web has been just cranking over here. It's I don't know, like the last week I've not played pretty much anything, and the week before that I've just been pretty much. It's been Switch for me for the main part since that has come out, and then. I don't know. It's just something a little bit about the weather. I think we don't get it very good here very often. Unlike it's all year round for you, pretty much. So
well, we've just entered monsoon season. So since yesterday, we've had dust storms and a bunch of trees and telephone poles have been knocked down. So we're going through it right now. We shall overcome as usual, you know.
Yeah.
But it has cooled down. We're sort of in the high 20s at the moment, which is nice compared to the mid 40s, which is what it normally is about this time of year. But you mentioned Switch 2. Let's just dive straight into it, shall we? Our first impressions. We've sat with it for a little while. Now the honeymoon phase has kind of worn off a little bit. I might as well go first.
Yeah.
The honeymoon phase for me wore off second or third day, if I'm being completely honest with you. Mario Kart's a great game. It's a great game. Don't get me wrong. It's a Mario Kart game. Fun. But there was nothing that wowed me about it. And there is nothing on the store that's compelling me to want to play my Switch 2 at the moment. It's been sitting in the dock for weeks now. So I bought this knowing that it'd probably be a bit dry up front, but we've got Donkey Kong in a couple of weeks, and then I think Metroid Prime 4 the month after, so I think it will eventually pick up. But let's just talk about that launch day. I'm going to go straight into this. That setup process is bollocks.
Oh, God.
What the hell? Wow, I've never seen a more...
QR code.
I'm not even talking about that, and that part's bad enough. I'm talking about, hey, let's transfer your data, and you're thinking, oh, how nice of them. No, you've got to use the official power brick. You can't just use a convenient USB-C cable, which I've got a ton of right at my desk. No idea. I had to go downstairs, turn my Switch on, make it, connect it to the dock and all this stuff, because mine's all hardwired around my unit and everything. Find another plug, make sure they're within Bluetooth range and all this bollocks. It was horrible. But we got there. Yeah, not one of the better setup experiences. But hardware-wise, it definitely feels a lot more premium than the first one. Much more comfortable, only because it's, an inch or two bigger. But that thinness, I didn't notice this with the first Switch, but having played the PlayStation Portal for a little while now, there really is no ergonomics on the Switch. It's a hard machine to hold for prolonged amounts of time.
It's not comfortable at all. You consider the Steam Deck OLED is considerably more weighty. It's so much nicer to hold because it's obviously got the grips. And,
exactly.
There's at least that grip form factor around the edge. I didn't have to do like the wing, like the Portal. But it's especially when you're playing Mario Kart. And Nintendo, you've really got to. Can we just have someone take Nintendo to like court or something, and unificate the button system on these bloody things? Why is it that, the control system is A is B? Yeah, it's reverse.
It's just I think it's a Japanese thing.
Annoying.
I specifically remember on Metal Gear Solid on the PS1, that was the first time I ever experienced it. Because on the old PlayStation, PS1 games, X was proceed, and then triangle was back. But somewhere over the years, circle has become back. However, in Japan, it was always the other way around. Circle was proceed and X was back. So over the years, PlayStation's kind of followed the Western suit, but Nintendo refused to do it. They're just doing their own thing. So it does mess with you when you jump between systems. Especially with my missus
Tiny
played
buttons.
it, and she's like, why does it keep going back? Oh God, holding the gas button for Mario Kart really kills your thumb. It's just such a precise button that really gets in there and stops it from flowing blood. But yes, I haven't played too much in tabletop. I did get the Pro Controller, very comfortable Pro Controller. Lovely materials, I'll say. The sticks are buttery smooth, probably the smoothest sticks I've ever felt. But yeah, at the moment, it's just lack of games for me. Lack of games that's doing it. I still feel more compelled to play the PS5 than the Switch right now.
I think for me, that launch day new console feeling, I don't think I even ever really got it. It was very weird. It was a weird feeling that, it was more. What was more interesting was the anticipation of it arriving than once it had arrived. And can you imagine if they didn't have Mario Kart World on that launch slate? Because it would have been really, really bad. But they really needed another 2 main titles for a strong launch slate on day one, really.
Yeah. I think Nintendo are finally experiencing what Microsoft and Sony have already been through when they sort of did their most recent consoles, because they had the whole upgrade patch system, and Nintendo had to figure that out. But I think with the Switch 2, they've hinged way too much on those upgrade patches, because Nintendo are very much like Sony in many ways. They've got one big exclusive sort of every quarter, or at least they did have at some point. But this time round, it's like, oh, we're going to have upgrade patches for both Zelda games, and then Mario Odyssey got an upgrade patch, and, Toad's Treasure Trove got an update patch. And it's like, did Toad's Treasure Trove really need an update patch? It was a isometric treasure hunting game. I love the game, but didn't really need one. So I think they're taking advantage of the audience a little bit in that regard. But, we haven't had their sort of first showcase since the Switch 2 launched. They normally have a Nintendo Direct around September-ish time. So I think that's going to be the show where all eyes are on Nintendo for something, because it's a little bit dry out here right now.
Yeah. Just trying to think of some other things we should mention on it, really. I've not had a situation where I've ran down the Switch 2 in handheld mode down to,
Same.
bottom of the battery yet.
Same.
There has been complaints about the battery life similarly to the original Switch. I've never took it anywhere with me yet. It's never left the house. So, where that factor comes in, I'm not 100% sure. We tried the game chat experience, at least the audio side of it. I don't think it's worth investing a camera. It seemed all right.
What's close to buy, Mondo?
Yeah, well, it's a shame the Hori one was not high resolution.
720, yeah.
But
I mean, look, game chat, right? It did the job. It did what it needed to. I think it's cool that they finally implemented a native solution for game chat now. But there doesn't seem to be a fully fledged invitation system yet. Everything is done through the game rather than the dashboard. So, on Xbox and PlayStation, 9 times out of 10, you'll hit either the guide button and invite a friend from a friends list. Well, you don't really have that on Switch yet. You've got to go into the Mario Kart menu, for example, hit online battle, and then figure out which one of those sub-menus you can invite a friend through. So it still does it in its own weird little way through the game.
Yeah.
Who knows? By Switch 3, we might have that. I don't know. One can hope, one can wish, or maybe there's a firmware update in progress that they haven't announced yet. Who knows? But yeah, look, this is not something any serious gamer is going to use and rely heavily upon. It's let's play a few races of Mario Kart, which we did, and I think after the 5th, 6th one, I was like, all right, that was fun. I'm getting a little bit bored now. It's that's it,
Yeah.
There was no depth to it.
Well, there wasn't a lot going on there, and apparently they've made the game worse through a patch. But we'll talk about that when it comes. We'll go properly into Mario Kart in sort of a separate section. There was a few more things I wanted to mention. I was quite happy with the audio on it. I thought the speakers were firing out quite nicely. Crisp, clear audio for me. Got no complaints in that department. There was a lot made about this LCD screen experience. I'm not really... I'm playing it. I think you have to be really super conscious of what you're seeing on screen to complain too much about the way it outputs when you're spinning a like if you're... Maybe I haven't played the right game to see where this downfalls. Maybe in Cyberpunk it's really evident. I'm not sure.
So I think the vast majority of those complaints and people picking out those issues are those coming from the Switch OLED model. And obviously from an OLED to an LCD, you will notice the difference. The blacks aren't as deep, the refresh rate isn't as good, and obviously the battery life is impacted by having the older LCD screen. But, you know, if you dock it and you have an OLED TV, problem solved. So, you know, are you... It's a weird one because don't get me wrong, I love OLED. All my TVs in my house are OLED. But do I look at the Switch as that premium game experience to the point where I want an OLED? Like, if it had one, fine. But I've got a PlayStation, I've got an Xbox, I've got, you know, a Mac and a PC. Like, if I really want that premium gaming experience, I'll take it over there. Because at the end of the day, you're going to get a great screen on freaking Mario Odyssey. Like, does it really translate? You know, so it's a weird one. But I mean, battery life is probably a valid concern. Sure, it will improve battery life, but it'll also increase the price by $50 to $75. Or Nintendo, knowing them, $150. So you got to pick and choose.
That's it. My favourite way to play has been probably the kickstand with the Pro controller. Even though I bought a second-hand original Pro that sounds like it's going to creak every time I use it. Like the plastic's going to fall off from the sound of it. It makes so much noise.
You do have quite a knack for the way you buy hardware, I've noticed over the years. It's just always a bit... You know, you could have quite... Pre-owned.
I know, but you get a 2-year warranty. So, you know, even now, easy I break with things.
Amazon, but yeah.
Well, I was going to say that one thing I am happy about, and I think I'd have been more disappointed if my OG Switch dock hadn't kaput. Because it solved that problem. I can play my, you know, updated on Switch. That it's moved enough that those really annoying frustrations with how dated the original Switch hardware was, that it's kind of at least pushed it up and modernized it, you know, a tad. So that's kind of where kind of my head is around that. I think I would have been far more annoyed if I bought that console with a properly working original Switch. So my final thoughts on the Switch 2 then. I really got to base this down to the fact that it was circumstantial in a way, because my original Switch dock had given up the ghost, stopped working, couldn't play the game, you know, couldn't play it on the telly. And the fact that now Switch 2 solves that particular issue, that was a bonus. And then I think where it's pushed it just far enough into that real frustration. Because I used to get so frustrated at how dated the Switch, OG Switch was in terms of its hardware. You play any third-party game, it was disastrous. It's at least got around that. But I know I'm not going to get the best experience, but it at least takes a lot of those games into the realms of what I would call as now acceptable realms of being able to play. Because some of the, you know, the OG Switch stuff was absolutely terrible. Unless they did a bespoke port of that game, often they would run horrendously. So it's addressed that. But in terms of it being, you know, this magical new experience, I mean, Nintendo have played it safe. You know, this was the company that you could almost rely on for being ones to take a bit more of a chance, you know, with things. And
the paint's not dry yet. You know, a very lackluster launch, but you know they're going to bring out some cardboard thing that connects to Bluetooth that doesn't make any sense, that costs $100. So I think from that regard, it's not going to be much of an issue. It's just the first Switch was so successful. It checks so many boxes. It's like we don't have to make a handheld and a home console. We can kill two birds with one stone. Everyone's got the libraries. It's all digital now. Let's just carry on going down this road. So I was never worried that it was going to follow suit like the Wii U did. I was more worried about, is it going to push the boat forward enough to give me a great version of what I already love? And it seems to check that box, you know. Again, software isn't quite there yet, But Nintendo don't really disappoint when it comes to that. I'm sure we'll get a Smash Brothers Switch 2 update that'll improve a bunch of things. And that's a big hitter. You know, people want that. I know that the remakes of Zelda Link's Awakening and Echoes of Wisdom are greatly improved on this. There was no stable frame rates on the first Switch. So now they're hitting a stable 60, which is great. I've got Link's Awakening, so I do need to go through that. I did throw Mario Odyssey on. I was like, yeah, I might get back into this. And then, my God, I didn't realize how weird Mario feels when you control him in that game.
Yeah.
So I was really put off, and I was like, oh, no, turned it off. I don't know. Weird. I don't know. Something didn't gel with me.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time. You know, we've got this thing for the next 7-8 years. They're going to release stuff for it. So
Yeah, definitely. I do feel like, though, I think the guys at Digital Foundry, I think it was Ollie Mack, was kind of speculating, like, was this really the next Switch? Or did Nintendo really do a bait and switch here? And this was the Switch Pro model, whereby they saw that units of Switch, there wasn't the slowdown they were expecting. And the Switch Pro perhaps could have been their natural, you know, like in terms of a PS4 Pro-esque mid-gen refresh type thing. And it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. But that the OG Switch, the units, it took so long for those sales to slow down. Yeah. And I wonder if they just thought, So I don't know. It could be interesting. We may see Nintendo go for a shorter cycle potentially, but I don't know if that was the case. They could, and trust me, if they want to make money again, you know, big money, because the opening weekend sales set a record for this machine. I
think we're at 3.5 million now. Yeah.
So maybe that's an idea for them, but they should do something. The next time they do something, I think it should be game changing. You know, what we expect them to do.
Well, since we're talking about next gen, let's just quickly touch on it, because there is a couple of tidbits here that have happened since we last recorded, and that was Sarah Bond, CEO of Xbox Gaming, has officially announced their partnership with AMD for their next generation. Like we didn't already assume that was going to happen. But she confirmed it in like a 1.5-minute video, as did the CEO of AMD, also put out something on the equivalent on their end. But yeah, because there were some rumors swirling around, you know, is Xbox looking at Intel, because Intel's in the, you know, really bad state right now. Maybe they want to get into the gaming space and try and, you know, stop the sinking ship. But it looks like they've gone with AMD. And it makes sense. AMD have just been killing it the past few decades, to the point now where even on PC, AMD chips outpace Intel for gaming, and it was always the other way around. So here we are. The big blue giant is going to have a big blue death. So we know that's happening, and they've also announced the ROG Ally X. I don't know about you, but I'm not excited for this whatsoever. No. It's a Steam Deck, but it's powered by Windows. Do I want that? No. The current ROG Ally is like $600, and the Ally X has 24 gig of RAM as opposed to 16, and another 512 gigs of storage in addition to the 5 gigs. So this thing's going to be a PS5 Pro, $799.
Yeah.
It's not going to be cheap. $600 to $700, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I looked at that. Obviously, it's going to set the benchmark in terms of handheld power, but the fact that it's actually only pulling from the PC side of the dual release library from Xbox is also something that they kind of kept a little bit like quiet. They were like,
very shady.
We're going to gloss over this a little bit.
I get it though. For scalability, it makes sense. It's a PC handheld at the end of the day. But you've got to tell people this stuff. You can't just be like, "Oh, we're doing everything for gamers. Here's your Steam store. Here's your GOG." And no.
Yeah. But I was surprised though, because I honestly had thought that Xbox were pretty much out of the console hardware race, and it sounds like they're not.
Well, I say I beg to differ. I think they are. I think they are because that's exactly why they've handed it over to Asus to build the ROG Ally X.
Yeah.
And also, there was another project in the background where Microsoft were building their own Xbox branded handheld as well.
Right.
At the time of the announcement for the ROG Ally, they paused that project. Since then, sort of 2 weeks after, they've officially cancelled it now. So they're not investing in the R&D and the whole manufacturing for that anymore. And it goes back to an old rumor we heard maybe over a year and a half ago where they were saying that the next generation of Xbox is going to be the UI.
Yeah, there's a white label it.
Right. Are Asus, they're just going to be an OEM. Are Asus going to be the hardware makers of that as well? Are we going to get Lenovo-based Xboxes? Are we going to get, Dell Xbox? Dexbox? I don't know what the hell they're going to call that one, but... you're going to get all this weird fragmentation. I suppose from one perspective, it makes gaming interesting again. When you look at sort of your 90s gaming, there was all these weird peripherals and weird players stepping into the arena. So, yeah, you get that. But Windows has sucked for gaming for decades now.
Yeah.
And they talk about how they're going to improve it because there's been all this hype around SteamOS and how lightweight and how efficient it is running on Linux. That people are actually moving away from Windows on the PC in the PC space as well. They're actually installing box standard Linux and getting on with life over there. So, on one hand, it's good that Microsoft's recognizing that and they're finally tuning Windows to make it better. On the other hand, I've been through this rodeo so many times before in my life. Do I trust Xbox or Windows to do it? Sure, it will be better, but by how much? Do we need all the Microsoft Office DLLs and registry edits loading up in your handheld? They're gonna install an update, and it's gonna brick it. How many times have you been working and you get that bloody update wheel that just always comes up at the most inconvenient time? I think for me though, where I'm a little bit discouraged with this whole PC handheld thing is, I love the plug and play aspect of a console. What I don't like is, with these PC handhelds, there's all these button mapping things you got to do. Oh, do the buttons map correctly from the PC version to this? You got to set all the buttons, and then you got to mess around with toggles and switches. Okay, I'm on a mobile device. I want it to look good, but I want to make my battery last longer. It's just like there's too much to think about.
Yeah.
And I know Steam have made it easy because they've got profiles for this stuff now, where it's like, oh, this is Steam Deck certified. Okay, great, you've certified that it works to a certain level and respect, but I don't own a Steam Deck. How much you've got a Steam Deck? How much configuring do you have to do to get an acceptable gaming experience?
So they've got a real high benchmark for their games that are Steam Deck verified. That means that they'll run as you see them, as you expect. The fact that you can still play non-fully verified Steam Deck games, I find is pretty interesting. Like, I can play Euro Truck Simulator on my Steam Deck, right? I know
you've got a thing for those sim games, haven't you?
But then the control mapping, people have built profiles, and you just literally go down, select that, set that as the default, and it works.
It's community source then?
Some of it is, some of it's obviously official. And then there's like Proton, which is the engine that it uses. There's some games where you can modify the engine you're on, and it will work on Steam Deck. So that Vladik Brutal game I bought, I tweaked the Proton engine, just changed. There's about 6 different profiles you can use, and the second one I selected, the game ran fine. But I mean, there's such a massive library of Steam Deck verified games anyway. If you just want that out of the box experience, you don't have to, mess around and play it. But I do like the fact that, you can go in there and go, this game, I can only get it. I can't get it on a console. But to be able to do that little adjustment and go, oh, actually, I can play this, and this is solid on the Steam Deck, just with a little bit of tweaking, makes it worthwhile. And I'm not having to, Bluetooth a keyboard and mouse in to do any of those tweaks and stuff,
Yeah. I like the sound of that. I mean, if I have thought about this, if I ever do go down the PC handheld route, it probably would be the next Steam Deck, the Steam Deck 2. Because they're also very close. The OLED came out 1.5 years, 2 years ago now? It's been a while. So they have to be... I think what they're doing is they got wind that Microsoft were doing something. They saw all these new players come into the space, the MSI and everything. So, and the LG. And so I think what they were doing is just kind of letting the technology get a little bit better and plan that second one. But I definitely think there's a Steam Deck 2 in the next 12 months hitting shelves. And if I want to go down that route, I'm definitely not going to be giving any money to Xbox, and that's going to be our next story we talk about shortly. But Steam, I kind of am at the point where I want to see Microsoft fail because they've owned this space for too long, haven't improved it enough for too long. Be honest, what's the last real version of Windows where you sat there and went, oh, this is an improvement?
I don't know. I've been on Mac now for so long.
Why did you go to Mac?
Because when I buy a laptop, within 6 months, it feels like it's fucking 4 years old.
Exactly. Yeah. I fell trapped to the Vista thing. None of my hardware worked when I upgraded to Vista.
The pinnacle moment was Windows ME. Because it had Windows Movie Maker and pinball, but no.
But at least with ME, you could see the ambition, and it was just all right. But I think Windows 7 was probably the last Windows we actually needed. Everything since then has just been, it slowed my computer down. Oh, my game benchmarks slower than my old system. It's like there's no benefit to this stuff anymore.
No.
And they're on the verge of, Windows 11 is just a bloatware haven.
The only thing that for Xbox, if they're going down this path, the only thing I can think of is that, if they're going to OEM stuff, don't OEM handhold. It's already been done. Steam Deck, I know it's weird that they want to do this kind of space with it. To be honest with you, the Nvidia Shield was before its time. And there is something waiting to occupy that living room space that gives you access to your Steam libraries and open model, a little bit like the SkyQ box or satellite boxes or whatever, the open model version of a console that can go Epic, GOG, Xbox's library, 5, 6, 7 different storefronts on a machine running really decent, powerful hardware that fits in the form factor and will run on the boot of a controller being pressed.
Well, that's exactly where I think Microsoft are going. I think this handheld was a smaller market to trial out their new business model. I really believe that. So it's like we can take the risk without investing a ton of money into the R&D and the hardware. We've got a great partner that has already built it. They'll tweak it, put an Xbox logo on it, and it's good enough for us. But realistically, all this is just prepping and learning for that next gen console next year. So I 100% believe that if this is the direction they're going, which they've shown their cards now, next Xbox will be a Steam box, an ROG, a GOG box, a Battle.net box, an Xbox Game Store box. It'll be the box for everything. That's the approach. Yeah. And people have also gotten the PlayStation equivalent games on Steam working on the Ally X as well. Now, still early days. What Sony does to combat that remains to be seen, but I don't see them taking this lightly. They will either pull games from the Steam store or create their own launcher. And I think that's probably what it is. They'll create a Sony launcher, and all the Sony games will be in there. People will cry about it, but it stops that launcher being on non-PlayStation devices, Yeah. But interestingly, it puts Sony in a very interesting... I say interesting because we don't know how this will turn out for them. This could very well be the next best thing since sliced bread. And there are a lot of people out there that do want the everything box. There really are. But the console audience that they've already accumulated, what happens to them? Do they adapt? Do they migrate? Do they give up gaming altogether? Is this too complicated? Is it too expensive? There's a lot of ifs here at the moment, and they're taking a very big gamble on it. One thing we do know, though, is that they've confirmed, the CEO of PlayStation has confirmed that PS6 is in development, but also is the next PSP. Part of me can't help but wonder if Sony will take a similar approach, not with all the storefronts, but with the scalability of their games. We'll also release a PSP shortly after PS6 launches, so we don't cannibalize our own market. And then everything that comes out on the PlayStation will be scalable to the handheld as well. So they'll take a kind of half-step approach, but still maintaining that ecosystem, keeping it clean, keeping it simple, keeping it very PlayStation like they've done so far. And exclusives will still be a big core part of this. And hopefully in the next year or two, that live service ship that didn't work so well for them has finally done the 180, and we start to see those games start coming back onto the platform again. And that's the direction I see myself gravitating more towards, hence why I did jump to the Sony ship. So
Yeah, exactly. And now there is no going back.
there is no going back. And you want to know why? Go on,
What
you
about-
give them the news. Give them the news.
Well, we've just had Mike. So I don't know how many people are left at the moment. I think we might have someone who's like going around.
Cleaners are there still.
Definitely,
surely.
the cleaners are still there. That's probably about it at this point. Microsoft have announced another savage round of layoffs, and I mean, we can't even go 5 episodes without talking about another round of layoffs from Microsoft. Surely,
It's getting stupid.
9,000 employees now affected, 4% of the workforce. That is what has been happening. I've been fresh off the news of this. What else have you been hearing on this front? I could see some bullets, but I've been kind of a little bit late to the news as this broke earlier today.
So let's start with the announcement, then we'll work our way backwards. I think is probably the best way to do it. So 9,000 employees affected, which Microsoft have said it equates to about 4% of their current workforce. Obviously, the usual slew of emails went out to the wider audience that, as we align our new strategy and as we make things better for the gaming audience, blah, 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 we think we're positioning ourselves. There were some interesting quotes in there that I've extracted from these emails. So these are 3 from Phil Spencer's email in particular, right?
Yeah.
So we've got the first one. He says, for enduring success and allowing us to focus on strategic growth areas. Okay. And then the second quote I've pulled is, follow Microsoft's lead in removing layers of management to increase agility and effectiveness. And then in the last paragraph, he says something to the effect of, I recognize that this comes at a time where Xbox had its best lineup and highest number of gaming hours played.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't know why I've picked these 3 out, it's because Microsoft has not only cancelled titles such as Perfect Dark and Everwilds, but they've shut down the initiative, the studio altogether. They've laid off 50% of Turn 10, which would explain why we didn't get a expected Forza Horizon announcement this E3.
Yeah.
There was an MMORPG that Zenimax Online was working on, codenamed Blackbird, that's been cancelled. And rumor has it that was going to be a Star Wars Mandalorian game, so pretty big deal.
Yeah.
King, the makers of Candy Crush, have laid off 10% of their staff, which I find interesting considering those guys just print money.
Yeah.
And also Bethesda's European offices have been hit as well. So no one's safe. They didn't give numbers about the Bethesda layoffs, but it literally, look, at this point in time, you're starting to notice a pattern, right? Is this really making Xbox a better gaming platform? What I've taken the liberty of doing is just going onto ChatGPT and asking it to give me all the layoff announcements in the past 12 months, just the last year. There's been more, but let's just keep it clean. June of 2024, about 1,000 employees were affected, but most of these were from the HoloLens and Azure cloud divisions, all right, laid off. And then May 2025, we had 6,000 jobs, about 3% of its workforce, including Xbox, LinkedIn, and international offices laid off. 6,000, so that's 7,000 so far. Again in May, 270 employees in the LinkedIn office, because they own LinkedIn as well, were laid off. June 2025, 300 additional employees, mainly based at the headquarters in Redmond, Seattle, were laid off.
Yeah.
And then this one today, 9,100 employees in July 2nd. And you've got to, at some point, question this. Like, okay, let's look at Arcane Austin.
Yeah.
That
was out. That was outside of that, wasn't it?
That was even outside of that. I could be, I'm being generous by not including it, but we have to include it. You've got to look at the choices that the management are making here.
Yeah.
They allowed Redfall to come out the way it did. They could have stopped it. Sony are unanimous for doing this. They are synonymous for doing this. They go out there and they stop games because it doesn't meet a certain quality standard. They allowed Redfall to come out. They allowed that game to get completely creamed. And then obviously when no one played it and it got the bad reviews, what did Microsoft do? They shut down Arcane in Austin as if it's the developers' fault for not having more time. BS. And then you look at what happened with Tango Gameworks, the makers of Tokyo Hi-Fi Rush, Evil Within, among other things. Shinji Mikami even saw the writing on the wall and left months prior to that.
Yeah.
Pete Hines, CEO of Bethesda, shortly after the acquisition was complete, he leaves Bethesda. He sees the writing on the wall somewhere. Mike Ybarra, the now CEO, I believe, of Blizzard, who used to be on the Xbox leadership team, constantly voicing his opinion on X, constantly criticizing, constantly wondering what the hell Microsoft are doing. And then we have one of the founding members of the Xbox team, way back in the early 2000s, I forgot her name, recently put up a video on her channel talking about how Xbox have lost their way. What made them great no longer exists. They're all in it for the money. I've said this in multiple episodes. I really think there's somebody up there in finance treating the Xbox division like the Microsoft division, setting the same financial targets when that you can't translate. That doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You don't sell like... Yeah.
Alpha Dog is also Roundhouse Studios.
Yeah.
And the Odyssey team in Blizzard as well.
Yeah.
All impacted by it.
Let's talk about what we didn't see at this E3. We heard nothing from Bethesda. Nothing.
No.
Nothing about Elder Scrolls 6, which we're now going on to 8 years since they unveiled they were making it. We didn't even get Starfield coming to PS5.
Or even a new DLC.
I mean, the DLC was 50-50 after what happened last year, but definitely the PS5. I mean, they could have made money. The game's practically built. Changed the button prompts from A, B, X, Y to triangle, square, circle, whatever. We didn't get any of that. We didn't get the new Forza, as we mentioned. We didn't get any Fable news. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if Fable gets cancelled. I really wouldn't. I'm surprised we didn't even get Gears news either. We got the Reloaded news, but we didn't get E-Day news. So if they're so happy to cancel such big hitters, and Perfect Dark, which is a game that's been in development since 2018, close to everyone's hearts from the N64 days, and then they show it, and it was the highlight, the crown jewel of the show last year, Microsoft or Xbox's best ever E3 show.
Yeah.
And that was the one where everyone was like, holy crap, it exists, and it looks good, and Crystal Dynamics are on board, and they've got a great track record, and oh my god, I can't wait for this game. And then to be like, yeah, for enduring success and allowing us to focus on strategic growth areas, for Microsoft's lead in removing layers of management to increase agility and effectiveness. I'm sorry, how does closing studios remove layers of management?
Or cancelling games,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you've invested 6 to 8 years in the development of this game. What's another year or two at this point? Let it come out.
I remember hearing about Perfect Dark. We were several months prior. Why we were so shocked about seeing Perfect Dark last year was the fact that we heard a few months prior that this game was supposedly in absolute development hell.
Yep.
And then we saw it. So I don't know whether there's still, it showed us 30 seconds of
smoke and mirrors.
Smoke and mirrors, perhaps. Yeah. I don't know.
Anything's possible, but at some point you've got to look at the track record. You can take the one-off announcements and make your own judgment, but then I think we've got a good enough track record here, a year to a year and a half of moves that really haven't landed well with the consumer base.
Yeah.
And I think the one that hurts people the most, I mean, Perfect Dark getting cancelled is a big deal, but the one that hurt people the most was Hi-Fi Rush.
Oh, and fans of Evil Within, yeah.
Evil Within as well.
Series, yeah.
But fortunately for that studio, at least it got picked up by Tencent right before the studio closed. So there is a chance Hi-Fi Rush 2 could still happen, but at least those guys got to keep their jobs. Look, I'm not going to play Mother Teresa here, but, it's anytime someone loses a job because of idiotic management that don't know what direction the ship's going in, it is always a bad thing. But man, this is exactly why I cannot, in good faith, put hard-earned money towards their next generation. The decisions they're making don't benefit me as a investor of their platform, all the library of games I've built up over the last 25 years.
Yeah.
There's nothing they're doing going forward that tells me they're going to be around much longer. They've gone from third place underdog to be made fun of to Microsoft evil, corporation.
Well, yeah, but there was one point before that. If you look at that free 6-month window whereby they could have, been took the crown. I mean, if they took a very different direction, we've said it. We've been through it many times on this podcast. But if they took a different direction, different strategy, rather than them trying to recoup money from the ABK deal so quickly.
Yeah,
they could have really put some serious pressure on PlayStation, and
they
it could have been
won.
a different result. Yeah,
They could have won the console war.
yeah,
But they didn't want to wait the 6 to 12 months. They had to put everything. I get the Call of Duty legally. They couldn't do it. So fine, let's exclude Call of Duty. But Indiana Jones, Starfield, all these games they've got in the pipe that they could just literally keep as an exclusive. It's like, I get it. You won't make as much up front. But think about the customer base in the long term that will gravitate towards your new console, especially now that we're on the cusp of a new generation. But no, instead you be the bad guy, you give BS excuses about why you've done it, and try to justify it as if this is the right thing to do to make effective choices and make the games better. I'm sorry, but closing down the initiative doesn't impact any other game you've got in development.
yeah.
It impacts your bottom line, and that's really what this is about, corporate greed. And Microsoft being a $3 trillion company, the richest company in the world by today's standards. Probably more than that now. Has no excuse. What are we cutting costs for? Every 2 months we're cutting this much aggressively? You're not hemorrhaging money. You're doing better than the US government. What are you talking about? It's ludicrous.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like I said, based on that, there's nothing in good faith I can support here anymore. And I never thought I would do it, but jumping ship to Sony was the obvious choice. They still push boundaries. They've still got first party. And yeah, they've got a bit of a slump going on with the first party right now, but they've already started to steer that ship back. And I have no doubt that they'll be the giant that they have been for the last 5 generations, So,
yeah. Oh, I had finally had the Xbox dashboard fatigue.
God,
It didn't bother me for such a long time, but now I turn the thing on and it's like, yeah, it's horrible.
ugly.
And the fact that the store is full of shite. When you try and check for new games, it's just full of shovel crap. I mean, everyone has got that problem at the moment, but no, it's just not a nice experience booting up games
it's
on
not
there anymore.
curated. Yeah. I mean, and the thing is, we've seen screenshots and, there's been some hands-on previews with the Ally X. And they're using the same design language, the same dashboard, probably the same underlying technology.
Yeah.
I think I told you recently I turned my Series X on after not touching it for about a month just to delete games that I've re-downloaded on my PS5. And I was reminded very abruptly that, wow, this thing is slow, it's choppy. It doesn't even handle HDR great. Like I go into an HDR game, screen turns off, comes back on, go back to dashboard, screen goes off, turns back on. And then I hop onto the PlayStation. I'm like, oh, everything's snappy, everything's beautiful, everything just makes sense where it is. It's colorful, there's no shovelware. The store's a bit more curated, and I'm like, yeah, this makes sense for where I want to be at this point in my life.
Yeah.
It just makes a lot of sense. The mobile app works. How I've said this so many times over the years. How, when I push download to console on the Xbox app, do I always get an error? And everyone I know has that same error.
Yeah.
Unable to download. But somehow PlayStation, I click it starts downloading on the console. I turn on my PS Portal, bang, it turns on the console in the next room or wherever I am. It's just the protocols all seem to work, and they're not the ones who wrote the rules of the internet. Microsoft did. It's just, it's mind-blowing. So at this point, I think the only thing that needs to happen is Phil and the exec team really need to do one, take their severance and just leave. And Microsoft needs to be spun off into its own company with its own finance department, its own board, its own targets. They can't be held to the same standard as an enterprise company. They can't. It doesn't make sense. They're not in the business of selling licenses. You're in the entertainment business. You can't measure them the same.
No.
You just cannot. So unless someone buys Xbox, which at this point in time, how lucrative the money is that they're making with all this multi-platform crap, I don't see happening. That ship has unfortunately sailed, and Microsoft is going to go down as the evil, the evil sorcerer of the gaming world at this point. Who would have thought?
There you go. There you go, indeed. Anyway, that is kind of wrapping up the conversation on the Xbox side. We've got one last thing, really, for this episode, and we're going to try and finish on a bit of a positive note, at least. It is our featured game for the segment. We've not really talked about it during our Switch 2 discussions. I think you've alluded to the one, perhaps not all that impressed with it. I don't know, but Mario Kart World. I've played a lot of this, and I've really enjoyed what I've played of it. I think it's probably it's a game that you know what you're getting. It's a Mario Kart game at the end of the day, but all of the new innovation that they've brought into it. And I could take or leave free roam mode in it, to be honest with you. I knew it was always going to be a kind of semi-baked thing. But the cups in the game, really enjoyed. Everything I've sort of played of that. There's just no kart racer that kind of competes with that experience at the moment. So it's a great little launch title. I'm not a fan of, though, and this is probably down to the Switch 2 hardware, but I don't know whether it's the volumetric fog or it's bloom, or it's one of the two, but especially you see it so evidently in that opening track that the game's running on with the credits, that there's this like weird
haze. Yeah.
And it's like, don't like that about the game. It shouldn't really be there. And it's really noticeable in some tracks, not as noticeable in others, but it's just one of those things you look at and you go, yeah, I've got a piece of Nintendo hardware here. They've clearly not quite just put that extra little bit of thing in
Polish,
there.
yeah.
They've had to kind of work around it. How much have you sort of unlocked with it? Because I've been going through everything in each CC mode on both the world, the tour mode, which is the elimination 5-lap. Well, it's a one big giant race essentially, the tour mode, with elimination on it, and unlocking characters and enjoying what I've experienced of that. I'd say there's a couple of things that do frustrate me, though, with this a little bit, because you obviously unlock new vehicles from the amount of coins that you pick up throughout the game, whether it be in open world or whether it be in the actual races themselves. That gets capped at 3,000. You can technically sit behind one of those cars that release coins and cheat your way to doing it. The other way to unlock new characters is obviously the takeaway bags. And you'll get, 4 or so variants, maybe 5 variants of
a new hat
of the same character. And then you've got Kemet. Is it Kemet? The wizard type character that will randomly be an item that it has like a chance that you'll basically get transformed into a new character that you don't have yet. What was really frustrating for me was Peach medallions don't turn into unlocking new characters. The power switches, completing all of that, doesn't. You don't get nothing for doing the power switches.
Really?
They don't equate to any. All they do is give you little stickers that you can stick on your car. That's where you should be, putting new characters to unlock. And you'll play through that open world stuff because you want new characters to play the game. It just didn't make sense. And it was another one of these games I was just like, Nintendo, if you just had a bloody achievement system.
Oh, yeah.
Just you can feel it so absent, because even if it never rewarded you in that way, they could have done a whole bunch of that stuff on the achievement side where they could have rewarded you on that front. But I mean, in terms of the game though, really loving the new mechanics, the new jump boosts, obviously the grinding mechanics on it. We've seen some crazy videos across the internet of people learning shortcuts and all of that stuff. But there's just something really satisfying this time round on Mario Kart that I haven't experienced since the Nintendo 64. And that was really enjoying the time trial modes. Because there's so many different ways to shave seconds off a lap now. it can become quite addictive to get into that.
Yeah.
Not that I can upload my my lap time to the internet, because you need a subscription to do that.
Well, the good thing is it's only $20 a year.
No, I know
So
it's cheap, but I'm
it's
like, come on,
super cheap.
Nintendo, at least
Yeah.
you know, if it's leaderboards, let us do that. But
Leaderboards.
did you not get really sort of? Was it just too much? You knew what to expect with this one. Did it grab you more than a Forza Horizon game at least, or not?
It didn't grab me more than a Forza Horizon. It grabbed me. Ooh, dare I even say? I think I had a little bit more fun with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, if I'm honest with you. I felt more of an excitement with that, and that could be down to me just getting up there in age and just
Yeah.
But no, I finished all of the Grand Prix on 50 and 100cc, and I'm like halfway through doing 150. Obviously, as I mentioned, played a bunch of online games with yourself. Played an hour or two of the open world. I thought the open world was probably the most interesting because there's a side of Mario Kart you don't see there. And I did wonder how expansive that open world would be, considering it's a Nintendo open world. And it's pretty impressive. You got the mountains, the peaks, the valleys. It's all there to really kind of slow you down, not from driving from one end to the other in just minutes. So there's definitely content there from that perspective. I wasn't aware that collecting the P switches and the coins and the stars didn't equate to anything. That's a shocker.
No, I know it is. It really is.
But even if you hate achievement and trophy systems, much like what you just said, I did really notice the absence of it there as well. It's like, if I'm not gonna earn anything of value inside the game, at least let me build up my profile, and whether you call it stickers or stamps or whatever the hell it is, make it fun and Nintendo-y. Give me something for finishing all the Grand Prix, for all the time trials, for 25 online races. Give me something that keeps me working towards it, playing your game longer.
Yeah.
But they just don't seem to have capitalized on that on that opportunity just yet. And Nintendo's not a small company, but they've got this attitude where they act like a small company sometimes. It's really weird. They don't seem to have evolved much to the modern gaming world. I get it. They've got their own vision for how gaming is, and they've got their own core audience and demographics, and they've got their own analysis and data. They know what they're doing. They're a successful multi-billion-dollar company. But there are these really odd decisions they make where they just don't take that next step that they could be an even bigger company. It's like, what company doesn't want to make more money on top of all the money they made? That's just how business works.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe they add it in later on. I mean, if you go back to the PS3, it didn't launch with trophies. That got added in sort of, I think it was like towards the end of the first year through a system update.
Yeah.
So the first round of PS3 games didn't even have trophies, and they retroactively added them in. So it's entirely possible they could do it. Whether they do it or not is another thing. The online's very lackluster. It's only 20 a year, and the only reason I have it is because I love Tetris 99, so I still have fun with that. God, that music is frantic. But that's about it. I've toyed with paying for the add-on. You get the GameCube and all the retro consoles. I'm like, but am I going to play it? I'm not. I'm really not.
No,
so,
no. Very true.
And like I've said, I've when I sit down in the evening to jump on a game, I never have the urge to play a Nintendo game, at least not right now. So I'll reserve judgment until after the next Nintendo Direct. Could change. I have a ton of games. I built up my wish list on Switch. So I've got a ton of games I'm keeping, the tracker prices on.
Are they strictly Nintendo-only titles, or...?
Yeah. Any third parties I'm going to play on a better console where I get more benefit and bang for buck.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm waiting for Tears of the Kingdom to go down. I'm not about to pay $80, $90 for that. Metroid Prime Remaster, it's only $39.99, but I'm not in any rush to play it. Metroid Prime 4 obviously is on the wish list. Oh god, I've forgotten now. There's a handful of games. Echoes of Wisdom is on there as well. So yeah, I'll have to see.
I really want to see Nintendo, please, just at least refresh the current offers a little more. They haven't done it once. They've done the one thing when it launched. They've not updated it once. I'm used to seeing new deals every Tuesday.
Every Tuesday, that's it.
Nothing. It's been there. Every time I go and have a look on the store, it's still the same things on there.
Split Fiction, Cyberpunk, $10 upgrade.
Honestly, it's absolutely, Nintendo, you really need to step on that because, if I see a game down in that real bargain bin basement, I don't care. It might not be the best console to run it on, but if I don't have it in my collection, I could end up buying it. It's I like scraping the bottom of the barrel in terms of gaming bargains.
Do.
So.
The amount of crap you got me to buy is incredible. But speaking of which, you just reminded me of something. Angry Foot launches today, July 2nd on PlayStation. So if you watched our reaction to E3 or Devolver's show last year, you would have noticed this.
Devolver this year, did they?
They didn't, no. There was a crazy game, first person, you go booting everyone in front of you, and it just looked like great fun. That's finally out, so check the store while you wrap things up, and we'll give the audience a nice little prize.
Yeah, well, I'm going to show you a little bit of... we talked about IO Interactive's horrible depiction of the new James Bond, who looks like a
12-year-old
Temu version of Tom Cruise. Well, this is just incredible. Oh, God. The stickers are still on there anyway. This was, for me, the last really, really great Bond game. Everyone talks about GoldenEye as being the one. Well, I would argue that this was technically the last great James Bond game.
From Russia with Love. I haven't played that one.
Russia with Love. It has the most addictive multiplayer I've ever... even more addictive for me than GoldenEye, believe it or not. There was just something about it that was so good, and I finally saw it in the wild for £3. So when I actually boot up my OG Xbox again, it's at my desk. I just need to switch around some cables. I don't know, but I've got that in my collection. But anyway.
Nice. Angerfoot, currently going for $19.99 in the US store, so probably about £15 in the UK.
Yeah.
And Metacritic is sitting at 80%, a bunch of 9s and 8s and 9s out of 10s. So
there you go.
It's exactly kind of the ballpark of what I imagined.
Solid Devolver game there.
Solid Devolver. Apparently it's really disgusting as well, but funny.
Yeah. There you go.
So I'm getting high off life vibes from it.
If you've got sneaker fetish, you might like this one.
Or foot fetish.
Yeah.
I'm sure there'll be a melee option without the sneaker.
Cool. Well, maybe we'll... because that's definitely down on my list to buy that game anyway.
Speaking of feet, yeah.
I think it's on yours as well, so...
Just
we'll
wishlist
probably
it.
come back with when we play it. With,
Indeed.
A few thoughts on that one. I think that pretty much wraps us up, I think.
Yeah.
Not a massive amount's been happening since the Switch 2's launch, really. But we are in the midst, the pre-game before Gamescom happening. And it tends to go quiet at least a month before, towards the end of August. So, yes, we shall catch you guys for another episode soon. No doubt there'll be some other stuff that we put up in between that next episode record. And then episode 25, well, hopefully we'll have get into some game that's come out from the slate, and we can talk about a bit more of a multiplayer experience for that one. It's been a while since we've done any attempted playthrough of anything, so maybe we can get back into the halcyon days of when we did Halo Infinite, but we'll see. Anyway, guys, so if you're still here, thanks for watching, and we shall see you guys next time. Bye bye.